This is AEDT 2150U, Digital Technologies and Advanced Teaching Methods. The title of this video clip is Problem-Based Learning. One day, during my course introduction, as I was presenting a problem-based learning year-long scenario to my graduate class, one student raised her hand and said, "Why do we have to look at problems? I come from a different domain, and we usually try to see people as having capacities. We look at groups and we wonder what are the skills that people have, and we do projects that value every member of the group." I was forced to stop and think about this, given that I had never asked myself the question. Why do we have to look at problems? Are problems always as negative as we portray them in our daily lives, or can problems lead to valuable learning? Is learning the traditional way all that bad, considering that many people who had a classical training end up leading successful lives? The analysis questions for this video clip are as follows. What is problem-based learning, or PBL? What are the characteristics of PBL? What are the different models of PBL? By definition, problem-based learning is a student-centered approach that was pioneered and used extensively in medical education at McMaster University in the 1960s. PBL is driven by providing an environment in which ill-defined and open-ended situations and problems are presented to students. The students usually try to solve these problems in groups with teachers as facilitators or an enabler of opportunities for learning, rather than as instructors who take ownership of the knowledge and transmit it to the learner. In general, this PBL model requires the development of activities that require strategies to facilitate team and individual learning. One might ask at this point, isn't all learning problem-based? How does this PBL approach differ from the math problem we had in our elementary school textbook? Such as, Leah had 5 apples and she gives 2 to Jack. How many apples does she have? PBL has certain characteristics that we need to follow. The first characteristic is an acknowledgement of the base of experience of the learners. This means that the teacher should know about the cognitive structure of their learners. Who are they? Where do they come from? What is their family background, their level of education, their experience, etc. The second characteristic by which we recognize the PBL approach is an emphasis on students taking responsibility for their own learning. This means that the teacher does not give the answer to the students. Students must come up with original solutions to situations or problems. This involves a break with the traditional teaching and learning relationship. The third characteristic of PBL is a crossing of boundaries between disciplines. The world is not made with compartmentalized knowledge, as we have come to think it is in education. Math without language is not a science. Language without culture is not language. The fourth characteristic by which we recognize a PBL approach is through an intertwining of theory and practice. At one point, one must inquire in what has been done before and understood by others, otherwise we would be in a constant state of reinventing the wheel. The fifth characteristic is a focus on processes of knowledge acquisition rather than the products of such processes. In the end, it's not the final product that is important. It is what the student learned from the steps undertaken in order to come up with the final product. That's where the focus should be. A sixth characteristic is a change in staff role from that of instructor to that of facilitator. This is the most misunderstood concept. Teachers tend to think that they are the center of the action, and it is often difficult for them to stop having control over learning. That means talking in front of students. The other problem is that students don't always recognize teachers' facilitation skills as a teaching skill. Both sides have to make an effort to construe new roles, and that is extremely difficult. A seventh characteristic of PBL is a change of focus from staff assessment of outcome of learning to student and peer assessment. This is another shift from traditional roles because students need to take ownership of their success and have to learn to provide feedback to others. If the evaluation criteria are well operationalized and well understood, then learning to successfully reach them is more possible than if students don't know what the criteria are. When evaluation criteria come as a surprise, the learner has lesser chances of success, unless the only criteria is memorization and quality of language. In such case, the student and peers would not likely be good judges of the quality of the work, although one might be surprised. The eighth characteristic of PBL is a focus on communication and interpersonal skills so that students understand that in order to relate their knowledge, they require skills to communicate with others and skills which go beyond their area of technical expertise. This goes hand in hand with the school of Vygotsky. Learning starts from looking at people outside us, from understanding the world, from saying what we think, and from internalizing processes. Here's a table that shows the different PBL models. It comes from Maggie Savin-Baden's book, which you can find in the reference lists of this course. It shows the 5 models of PBL. The first one is PBL for epistemological competence. PBL for professional action is the second model. The third model is PBL for interdisciplinary understanding. The fourth model is PBL for transdisciplinary learning. And the fifth model is PBL for critical contestability. All models are compared against the knowledge involved in these models, the kind of learning, the actual nature of the problem scenario, what the students are supposed to do in their roles, what is the facilitator's role, and you notice here that we don't say the teacher's role or the instructor's role, because the teacher does adopt the role of a facilitator, and what is the nature of the assessment. So if you want to look at a particular model against the criteria by which they are judged, you have to look at the columns and the rows and try to match your activities according to these. The synthesis questions for this video clip are as follows. From what we know about PBL, what can we infer about problem-based teaching? Which principles should a course designer or a teacher keep in mind to prepare a PBL course? And finally, which PBL model would you use to prepare a 3-day-long induction workshop for new university professors? We will discuss this during our tutorial.